Okay, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope you had a great weekend. Yeah, it's politics down the line. You know that by now we're looking at something like 82 days to the election, the presidential election. And so here we are. Now, you recall that very, very recently, the president had sort of, butted into the conversation, so to speak, and said that, you know what, all these ruffians, people who are not going to behave themselves as regards election, that the security forces should take hold of the situation. And he really, gave them marching orders, as it were, that it's not going to be like before. You recall that the president has said that one of the legacies that he is determined to be leaving will be that of a free, fair, and generally acceptable election. Well, our guest this morning, friend of the House, actually a lot of the people that come in here are friends of the House, quite a lot of them. I'm talking about Mike Igini. Mr. Igini is the immediate past Resident Commissioner for Akwa Ibom State. A fine morning to you, Mike.
Yeah, good morning, Yori. Thanks for having me this morning.
Indeed. Now, I just described you as the immediate past INEC Resident Commissioner. It looks to me like that is out of your chambers. What's going on here?
Well, that is true. You are very correct. I have spent 10 years in the service of the fatherland in the Independent National Electoral Commission. And I'm back to my permanent office where I was before I went on a temporary service to the nation, the INEC, for 10 years. So Indeed. You are very correct. Indeed. I was the immediate past rec of Akwa Ibom State, having served in several states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Excellent. But nevertheless, you still are very, very closely concerned with all things electoral matters and election, especially a free and fair election in the country, whether in INEC or out of INEC.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I am a stakeholder. At the moment, what I'm dealing with is full activation of the Office of the Citizens. And I call on all Nigerians to do the same, particularly given the fact that having served for 10 years, from the time I disengaged, sometimes around August, I was clear to the Nigerian people that my votary is for Nigeria, and that I was going to use the 10 years of experience there, that all that we contributed to the electoral process, the ABC that culminated eventually in the 2022 Electoral Act, that I'm going to use that knowledge to help educate Nigerians as well on the process and procedure, that now that power has been taken back to the people outside the political class, it is now very clear that the respect for the people will now be the beginning of responsible leadership in our country. Okay. And so my partnership, and not partisanship, partnership with all Nigerians is to educate Nigerians as we go to 2023 election, which is just 82 days away.
All right. Just before we launch into the conversation proper, let's play this report that went out. That was when INEC met with editors, part of disseminating information. Let's just take up that package and we'll come back to studio.
It is 84 days to the general election, and INEC leadership meets with line editors on the strategic roles they play in the upcoming election.
Help our youth the truth to know.
Help our youth the truth to know.
In love and honesty to grow.
In love and honesty to grow.
In a speech, the Resident Electoral Commissioner at Lagos State says the meeting affords journalists the opportunity to learn more about the process of electioneering and developing the trends.
As the 2023 general election is around the corner, that is 84 days away to be precise, the need for an interactive meeting with the media, such as this, cannot be overemphasized. There is no gainsaying the fact that there is a very strong relationship between media performance and conduct of vibrancy of politics and political activities in a democracy.
The National Commissioner in charge of Information and Voter Education, Festus Okoye, appeals to line editors to help control the ugly and trend of fake news.
The Commission will continue to partner with the media not only as a key stakeholder in the electoral process, but also as a viable tool for combating misinformation, fake news, and malicious falsehood.
Because if we have a runoff in presidential election, I know that is quite capital intensive.
About the sophistication of your database so that it will be compromised.
While answering the questions from journalists, the chairman of the commission says Beaver's technology has helped electoral body in conducting a free and fair election.
But all I want to assure you is our determination as a commission to do what is right. And we have demonstrated this, not only in terms of the innovations we have introduced, but the practical conduct of elections in the country. And our hope and commitment and determination is that the 2023 general elections will not be different from some of the most recent elections we have conducted in terms of credibility and acceptability. That's the only thing that we derive joy from.
The Independent National Electoral Commission has, in the last 22 years of Nigeria's democracy, continued to improve on the process. Ademola Lawrence, TVC News, Lagos.
Okay, now that meeting of INEC and editors, was prepared. It happened very, very recently. Now, the unending attack on INEC infrastructure, INEC buildings, we had actually prepared for this topic before the news that came in yesterday that continuing the attacks on INEC buildings in Imo State, there was, an incident. The police have confirmed that that is indeed the case. So we'll be talking about this whole issue of people attacking INEC facilities as if that is going to, in some way, dabaru the elections. Apparently, from what we've been hearing, not so. Now, you'll recall, I was mentioning the other time that the president has sounded a cautionary note to politicians and their supporters. The National Security Advisor has backed this up. Seemingly tough action awaits anybody who shall we say, misbehaves in any aspect of the whole electoral process. Now, if you're just joining us, our guest is Mr. Mike Igini, the immediate past Resident Electoral Commissioner in Akwa Ibom State. Now, Mike, you as I was saying, you saw INEC continues in its efforts to engage the people, that's what it was doing when it was engaging the press. I wonder what you thought about the president's notice to politicians and their supporters to, quite frankly, behave themselves. And this was backed up subsequently by the National Security Advisor.
Thank you, Yori. The president is spot on the charges he has continued to give as a commander-in-chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Interestingly, I was privileged to be one of those who delivered two different subjects bordering on the 2023 elections at the Owerri Police Conference for Senior Police Officers, or the IGP lecture that took place in that state and was delivered by the president. The president could not have said more than what he did on that day, and I was very impressed. Obviously, leveraging or encouraging the current leadership of the IGP to replicate what he had continued to do since the Anambra election, Ekiti election, Ondo election, and the last governorship election of Osun State, where the kind of policing that we witnessed was quite different from what we used to see before. It was quite commendable. And I think on the basis of that, which is the reason why some of us for the first time have to publicly make commendation to the current leadership of the police, is that when we do so with a view to showing that when you acknowledge the conduct professional of a group, you are basically reinforcing the kind of behavior you want to see again. It's quite interesting that the president had to say this, and I must make this on record, that around the world, no set of elites will finish the project of any country, that is nation building. In fact, the work of nation building has no hope of final completion by any set of either elected or appointed elite. Therefore, the responsibility of every set of leaders, elected or appointed, is to make their own contribution. It's in this regard that my very strong advice, leveraging on what the president has said, is to inform, to remind all of us that around the world, no matter what a set of elected leaders or appointed may have achieved or not able to achieve, what is most taken seriously that will be recorded in history in a democracy is that at the end of the tenure of any regime, was that regime able to create an enabling environment that will lead to the conduct of a credible election that will bring in new set of leaders? Mm-hmm. That is what we are going to be remembered with. And that's why President Obasanjo is today celebrated and was allowed to come back for a second time as a civilian, because in 1979, he, though being part of the military that usurped democratic apparatus, the fact that he conducted election and handed over peacefully, that has been in record for him and celebrated all over the world. And that's why we will come back second time. Second, that Jonathan today, who is being celebrated around the world, nobody will talk about what the previous leaders have done or failed to do. The fact that President Jonathan demonstrated something that had never happened in our country, being the first in the history of this country as a civilian to conduct election that led to what we call a progression, a progress in terms of one party, a ruling party losing the election and handing over to another democratic government that has put his name in gold. And that is why today he's being celebrated around the world. More so, under his regime, so many things happened. The use of the corridor, the comparison of the biometric register, all of these things happened, changes in the electoral amendment, the Electoral Act, Section 160, Section 52, that previously prohibited the use of electronic media, which has been under United, it was repealed. Section 160 that said that even INEC, with respect to its power to organize itself to conduct election, shall not be subject to the direction and control of a president, was under United.
Yeah.
Similarly,
you know, Mike, now, I beg your pardon. Mike, you see, especially because of that sentence, I wanted to ask you, because you have experience as you're the immediate past, rec in Akwa Ibom. Yeah. That aspect of INEC's name, the first letter, Independent National Electoral Commission, is INEC really independent?
Thank you, Iyori. I think that this question that you have asked is being asked every day on account of the statements that have been made by the president at different fora, both in Nigeria here and outside the country, with respect to the fact that he wants to leave behind a legacy of credible election. I want Nigerians, and of course I've had to explain to some of our colleagues, EMB around the world, that when your president say that he will leave behind, he will conduct election and all, I said, no. You must take this profound statement of the president from a context. The INEC remains an independent election management body. The duty of the president, like the Jonathan, which I was now driven down without driving down to that of the president, and your question was very, very timely, is the fact that the job of the president is to create an enabling environment. And that is what the president meant. It is not that he's in control, INEC is taking direction or is giving directive to INEC. Not at all. I worked in the system, and I recall that when there was an attempt by members of his own party that Igini must be removed from office, the president at a meeting attended, and one or two who was at that meeting told me that, look, go and do your work. In fact, a serving minister, still serving, told me that do your work. The President Muhammadu Buhari told point blank those who were pushing for that that his job was not to remove a wreck. Now, the point being made here is that when the president keeps saying that, look, he will leave behind legacy, what it meant is clearly that he will create the enabling environment.
Okay.
And I want to quote the president clearly in this respect so that he's not taken out of context. But my advice to the speechwriter of the president is that that part of it should be well redrafted in subsequent conversation with Nigerians and international community so that impression wrongly is not given that he direct INEC, which is not true. Now, at the Owerri conference, Iyori, so that I close on this point as a background to the issues we are going to look at, is that the president, as I said, leveraging on the level of success, the kind of exceptional policing that we witnessed in the election that I have just mentioned previously. The president at the Owerri charge, in fact, the language was that I charge you or to continue to project a police force that will remain apolitical, firm, and loyal to democratic values in the countdown to the 23 election. It is by so doing that the police can be defined not just as true friends of the Nigerian people, but according to the president, but as a dependable and trustworthy partner in the drive to advance our democratic journey. What a profound statement. If I didn't end at that, I mean, I was so enthused by those statements as a commander-in-chief, all right? And I'll provide a rider to that. And we ended by saying, look, I take the Inspector General Police, I therefore charge the Inspector General Police to sustain the leadership standard, referring obviously to this set of elections that he showed exceptional policing, that will guarantee a level playing field and secure public space for citizens to freely exercise their franchise and for the outcome of the election to be a true reflection of the people's choices. Is ended by saying, I so offer my full assistance or support and encouragement in this direction. That is why all I require of the president now is a follow-up. There must be a follow-up because the attacks on INEC offices has continued unabated.
Indeed. Even we were just hearing about what happened in Imo State, I believe just yesterday. The police have confirmed that there indeed was an attack. But apart from all of that, INEC, quite frankly, INEC is busy juggling many problems, maybe not just one. For instance, talking about this, the continued attack on INEC's offices, it has implications. Things like PVCs that were destroyed, ballot boxes, essential equipment such as electricity generating, equipment, all of those being attacked. INEC has said that it doesn't matter what happens, it is going to deliver. But surely this is making the job a bit more difficult, maybe a lot more difficult than it would have been otherwise. INEC is still going to pull through, you think?
Iyori, let me tell you, no matter what non-constitutional, extra-constitutional, or non-legitimized actors try to do to undermine the progress of our country, as a people, as a nation, we must stand tall and mighty in defense of our values. The various attacks across the country are clearly attack on democracy. And we cannot be seen to behave as if we are in autarky or best reaction by nations to Philistines' characters who try to attack our values, as you could see going on in the US. Look, INEC innovations is what is actually further fueling the panic in the land today. And that's why you see some of this going on. But I tell you solemnly that who would have thought that in 2015, before the 2015 election, that the country will be able to pull through, given the ravaging activities of Boko Haram in some parts of the country. But we were able to pull through and conducted the election. Who would have believed that INEC could conduct election in Anambra State, given the ravaging on gunmen, on non-gunmen that have turned that place into a different place completely, but we're able to pull through. Well, let us know about stretch our luck, but I think that this is where the states wants to show that it actually has absolute monopoly of the instrument of violence. We don't want our country to be categorized among the states that are defined as failed states, because some of the indices of a failed state are somewhat manifesting. I know that we have the capacity to deal with some of this problem. So my charge, leveraging on what the president has said and calling on the president himself to ensure that all the security agencies, both actionable and non-actionable sector, almost stand tall right now to deal with the problem, because I am not aware, I don't know of any country where, for instance, the commander-in-chief will have to be moved from one state to the other to implement security challenges, not at all personally. It is the responsibility of those charged. And that's why I'm also encouraged, not just being encouraged, not just the word alone, that the National Security Advisor made a very strong statement. What we want to see is action, because as we speak today, the 2022 Electoral Act, INEC innovations and procedures that have been developed will ensure that all previous misfortune, political misfortune, can no longer be a misfortune of Nigerian people anymore. Okay. That is why there's even panic in the land. Don't forget that, as I've said before, people should go and study the Electoral Act, particularly INEC processes and procedure. Do you know that even INEC as a body, you just reported, INEC have been having series of training going on, having meetings, looking at the Electoral Act, looking at the procedure on how to deliver. Regrettably, despite all the innovations that have happened in INEC, these have not been complemented by change of behavior on the part of the political class, who are indeed responsible for the 95% of the problem we have. Why is it that when we are going to election, it's as if we are going to war?
Let me ask you, Mike. I beg your pardon. Let me ask you this, Mike. Sorry, Mike. Let me ask you this. In view of these incessant, unyielding, unending attacks on INEC and especially its facilities, the wherewithal with which it can do the excellent job that it is clearly capable of, I wanted to ask that, look, touching this building here, touching that generator there, can people still be accredited without PVCs, given that the BVAS, the biometric thing, voters accreditation system, actually has a soft copy register? I was just sort of exploring. Are there, in spite of whatever people do to, distort or disturb the process, can INEC still move ahead?
Iyori, let me inform. Our electoral process is governed by law, both statutory and procedural law. Under the current section 47 of the Acts, the law says that for any individual to be admitted, first is admission to the polling arena, you must have your permanent voter's cards. And that law has not changed. Okay. Even though section 49 has been repealed, under section 47, it has now again reenacted. And that was why INEC in 2015 came up with the slogan, no PVC, no voting. Remember, at that time, there was push by some Philistines that we should use TVC, temporary voters card, not our TVC television. Temporary voters card, that's what people were calling for at that time. We said by the designation temporary, it was meant temporary. Now that you have permanent, it's now permanent. Therefore, no PVC, no voting. So under the current regime, there is no room for that. Look, let me tell you one of the dangers and why, and we know why they are pushing for that. The two statutory provisions for rigging in Nigeria, INEC has blocked almost all the loopholes known to us for the period we've been in the system. This is the problem we have now. Now, the point is that Section 49 of the previous act was a statutory provision that was used to buy PVC so that people can vote on their behalf. Section 53, now repealed. We're now talking about Section 51. It now talk about numbers of accredited persons, no longer number of registered voters. Now, Yori, when you ask a voter to come to the polling unit because he said that his name is there, that is a recipe for violence, for chaos. Politicians are already planning that, look, the only way you are going to bring some thugs, some individuals to come there, they will now begin to insist that their names are on the beavers. And of course, you are also indirectly also giving another discretionary power to a presiding officer who, even when such thing, even when person's name is there, he could also say that the person's name is not there. We must not go to that arena at all. That is why we must follow the law, because otherwise they are going to cause confusion. You know the reason why they want to do that? You know, the polling unit now, Iori, is now the center of universe. That is where elections are now won and lost in Nigeria. No longer at the work election center, local government, state, and all the levels. We have moved away from that. This is the reason why they are now trying to introduce indirect way to say, hey, once your name is after all, you have the soft copy. Yes, I mean, the lawmaker knew that INEC will have a soft copy before they made that statutory provision. So your admission, you see, if you want to participate in the ceremony of exchange of garment, you must wear a garment. Your garment is your PVC.